Hi, my name is Brady Masters, aka B-Man, and this is episode 2 of the Good Sports Podcast, where I shine a spotlight on athletes with good character. And this is where my two passions, faith and sports, collide into one. And on today's show, we are going to dive into the Carolina Hurricanes ending their long championship drought as they have gotten over the hump. 20 long seasons they have waited, and their dream has become a reality. And I will dive into how the Carolina Hurricanes got it done as they took on the Vegas Golden Knights. I'll dive into the New York Knicks winning their championship, and I'll dive into how they collectively work together to earn this championship. Then I'll also talk about the World Cup, and one game in particular I will highlight, and I'll give you my thoughts on that game, and then I will give you my version of the Jackie Robinson story and what you can take away from this and see how you can apply these character traits and use them in your homes, your businesses, your communities, and in your neighborhood as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the Carolina Hurricanes winning the Stanley Cup final. Now, I tell you what, this Carolina Hurricanes team this year, they were hungry. They were hungry to finally end that long Stanley Cup drought and end the disappointing times in Raleigh. They took on the Vegas Golden Knights in what was an amazing Stanley Cup final. I would say this was probably the best Stanley Cup final that I have ever watched as a sports fan. The Golden Knights were the Western Conference champions as they knocked off the President's Trophy winners in the Colorado Avalanche to get to this point. And then on the other side, the Carolina Hurricanes, their opponent, they took down the Montreal Canadiens. After taking an L in the first game, they won 4 straight and advanced to the Stanley Cup final, where it was a 6-game, grinded-out type of battle that featured a lot of goals being scored, a lot of offense, not a lot of defense being played, at least in the first 3 games. And I tell you what, the Vegas Golden Knights, they really wanted to score the puck and wanted to get on the board first and really make it tough for the Carolina Hurricanes. In the first 3 games of the Stanley Cup final, the Vegas Golden Knights outscored Carolina 13-12. And that wasn't the brand style of hockey that Carolina wanted to play. Vegas was taking Carolina off of their game. But Carolina's approach was different in games 4, 5, and 6. Carolina went back to a hard-nosed, gritty, low-scoring defense. In Game 4, they gave up 3 goals. In Game 5, in Raleigh, they gave up 2 goals. And then, most impressively, the Hurricanes shut out the Golden Knights. They didn't give up any goals on their way to winning the Stanley Cup. Now, how impressive was that for them to go back to their identity, to stick what they believed in, and to come out there like that and tire out the Vegas Golden Knights, especially their home arena. And to do that, it was just really, really impressive to watch. And that was one of the reasons why Carolina was able to win the Stanley Cup and get over the hump. So that was my first key takeaway from this victory that the Carolina Hurricanes had. My second key takeaway was the Hurricanes, they were a team that didn't need players to score goals to make an impact. You know, we talk about all the time, players having to score goals to make themselves engaged in the game. Well, let me tell you something. You don't always have to score goals to make an impact on the game. Like, if it's urgent that you have to score a goal, you got to score a goal in order to be involved in the game. Well, I disagree with that. Andrei Svechnikov and Sebastian Aho, those two players have played a combined 18 seasons in the NHL, and they are the backbone of this franchise. And they were, let's face it, they were quiet in the Stanley Cup final, and sometimes in the postseason you wouldn't hear from them. And you probably wouldn't hear from them because they weren't scoring any goals. But they really made an impact on helping Carolina win the Stanley Cup. Combined in the Stanley Cup final, Aho and Svechnikov combined for 4 goals. But you want to know the great part about this is they provided Carolina with 12 assists. 12 assists on their way to winning the Cup. Now that is incredible, just how unselfish those two guys are. Even though they're not having a good night on the ice, but they're just able to produce on the ice, and they're able to help their teammates out big time. And I just got to say, what a job they have done all season long, all throughout their careers. They could have went other places when things weren't working out, but they have stayed true to their fan base. They have stayed true to their team and their identity. They stuck with it. And the last few years got tough for the Hurricanes. And then I'll talk about Jackson Blank. He's 22 years old. He's going to develop as a player that is going to give you problems. But it's good for Carolina because he can frustrate the crap out of the opponents. And he scored 7 goals, but provided 13 assists. And then Taylor, who won his first Stanley Cup, he's also scored 7 goals. And he tallied 12 assists for Carolina in the postseason. Very, very impressive team performance by the Carolina Hurricanes. It was awesome to watch. And I'll tell you what, there are other ways that you can impact a game. Offensively, you can pass to an open teammate. Carolina certainly did that this postseason. They did a great job with that. But also shooting the puck, even if they're tough angle shots. And defensively, you look on the other side, what you can do to impact the game. You can block shots. I talked about it the last episode. You can block shots. You got to sacrifice your body to make the plays that you need to make. You can be physical with your body. You want to make sure that you get your body in between the puck and the opposing player. Hockey is a very, very physical sport, and you've got to bring your A game. You can also prevent the opponent from shooting the pucks towards your goaltender, and blocking shots is a key example of how you can prevent that from happening. And that takes a lot of pressure off of the goaltender. The goaltender doesn't have to react as quickly as he needs to because he has trust in his teammates that they can go out, sacrifice their bodies for the team, and really make an impact that way. And also, you probably wouldn't think about this, but leadership. Leadership can really impact a game. I'll talk about Jordan Stahl and Coach Rod Brendamore in just a little bit. But leadership can definitely make a big impact in a game. If there was a team gave up a goal to the opponent, that leader there could say, "It's okay, guys. It's all right. It's just one goal. We can find a way back into it. We'll get it back here. We'll get some momentum back." And just kind of doing that to get the confidence back into the team that anything is possible. That it's just like the first 5 minutes of the game. The first 5 minutes of the game isn't going to be the entire duration of the game. That there's still plenty of game to go, and there's still plenty of time. So, and just learning from the mistakes too is also key. And then also encourage they're having a tough time in a game. You want to make sure that you go down into the bench or go down the ice if you're playing honest with the guy next to you. You want to make sure, if he's got his head down, you want to just cheer him on and say, hey, cheer up. It'll be okay. It's all good. So, leadership definitely is key for any sport that you play. It's not just hockey. Just to have that positive role model, that father figure that you need in whatever that you're doing in team sports. And my third and final key takeaway that I had from the Stanley Cup final is that Carolina was able to climb the mountaintop and get to what they wanted to accomplish for a long time, 20 years to be exact. They were able to win the Stanley Cup together as a team. They went through a goaltender change during Game 4 of the Stanley Cup final. Rod Brind'Amour has been riding Freddie Anderson, their goaltender, in this entire postseason run. But then Carolina gets down 4-0 in Vegas. It was just rough. And Freddie Anderson, after the second period, he goes sit on the bench. And then Rod Brind'Amour decides in the third period to put in Brandon Bussey, the backup goaltender, who doesn't have a lot of NHL experience. But he puts him in the net. And Freddie Anderson, he could have been like, oh, well, I guess he doesn't care about me anymore. And it's just like, why the heck am I here then? But, Freddie Anderson didn't do that. Even though he's played 13 seasons in the league, he wasn't like, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you did this, Coach Brind'Amour. But no, he understood that, hey, I needed a break. And Coach Brind'Amour told me that I needed a break. I was getting a little nicked up and that I needed to rest up. And they went through injuries as well. Teams go through injuries throughout the season, and it's tough. But it gives an opportunity for other guys to step up and play in their absence. Even if, they can't come back. And, other guys can rely on those players to make those plays in those players' absences. They were a determined group this year. Carolina was very, very determined to accomplish that goal. And then their leadership was incredible. I'll talk to you about Jordan Staal. I'll get more into him. He's been the captain of Carolina. He's been the whole orchestrator of this operation since 2019. And he has played 14 long seasons in the NHL, playing the game that he loves so much. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy Award as he became the MVP, if you will, of the Stanley Cup final. And it was well-deserved. But the goals isn't what got him that Stanley Cup trophy and also the Conn Smythe Trophy. But it was his leadership and his positivity on the entire team. He was motivating players like Jackson Blake, who I talked about him earlier, who's going to be a bright star in the future in the NHL. He's 22 years old. Logan Stankoven, this was his first year that he played with the Carolina Hurricanes. He's 23 years old. And his leadership really helped those guys turn into better players and also better individuals. So it was really, really impressive to watch that team come together, and actually for Stankoven and Blake to listen to a veteran who's been playing the game for a long time and just learning about what he has done in the past and what they should do better, and really just feeding off of each other. It was just so great to watch. And he also told some of those guys that they needed to go to the next play, focus on the next play. Don't focus on what was going to happen in the future. Just focus on one play at a time. And so they understood that, and they followed it on the way to winning the Stanley Cup. And then also, I got to give a shout out to Coach Rod Brendamore. This guy's been coaching 8 seasons with Carolina and 15 years overall. And let me just say, with how Carolina has been disappointing the last 5 seasons or so in the playoffs, that the organization could have decided to go with a different head coach. But no, they decided to stay with Coach Rod Brendamore. And Brendamore has produced leadership-like qualities to this organization. This guy continued to motivate his players to be the best that they could be, to keep fighting, to give everything that they have. And plus, he had a plan for all of his players to succeed in the type of system that he wanted to build. And I bet that was a tough decision, earlier on in the Stanley Cup final where he had to move on from Freddie Anderson. He was playing so good in the Cup final until he got nicked up in Vegas. But then to make that tough decision to put Bussy in goal, that's something that you have to do as a coach. I know things are going well for Carolina when Freddie Anderson was in net, but sometimes you just need to make some tough decisions like that to putting in a guy that doesn't have a lot of NHL experience and putting him in the net and thinking that, he's going to get nicked up. And then to turn around and go with him again in Game 5, to run him all the rest of the way to the Stanley Cup final. And some of those decisions that Brendamore made, you would be like, as a fan, like, why would he be doing this? You rode Freddie Anderson all the way to the Stanley Cup final, and then all of a sudden, midway through the series, you're going to be going with Brandon Bussy, who is essentially a rookie. Why would you do that? Well, sometimes you have to do that as a coach, and some decisions might turn out good in the end. And some others, you might be kicking yourself in the butt. But I will say that with Brendamore sticking Bussy in there and making that tough decision, that turned out to be a good decision for them to win the Stanley Cup. And it was just very, very impressive to see Bussy go out there and deliver at the stage and the biggest stage as well. And to watch him go out there and dominate and really tire out Vegas. But Carolina just went through it all season long, and look where that got them. It's just incredible to watch. So congratulations, Carolina Hurricanes. You all can cry tears of joy right now, and they're continuing to do that. And so just thankful that I got to see Carolina bounce back the way that they did, going from a team that wanted to go stride for stride with the opponent, score goal after goal after goal, to then go to a defensive, gritty type of performance the last 3 games to win that Stanley Cup. Sometimes you just got to stick with the same system. You might have to make some changes, but just make the right decisions to go along with your system, and it'll turn out good. And things are going good in Carolina right now with that fan base in Raleigh, and they get to celebrate that Stanley Cup, and they're going to remember this forever. And all the players are going to be remembering this championship for the rest of their lives. And they get to tell their families about that. How great of a team it took. How a collective group effort helped them win one of the greatest trophies in all professional American sports. An amazing, amazing story. When we come back, I'm going to talk about another amazing story, as the New York Knicks have ended their 53-year NBA championship drought, as they are now champions of the National Basketball Association. They got it done over the San Antonio Spurs. I will dive into more coming up next when the Good Sports Podcast returns. I am your host, Brady Masters, and we will be back after this.